in my brain it's like does not compute, does not compute, does not compute. Are we allowed to swear on? Yeah, I guess so. Rules, there are no rules, right? Hey everyone, it's me, Jess. How are we today? I'm here to finally film my December wrap-up. Hope everybody is well. So yeah, let's just get right into it. My New Year's resolution is to make my YouTube videos a little more concise. So let's try. I'm going to give that a try today. I'm going to try to not get too sidetracked. So yeah, I read 11 books in December as a result of the reindeer readathon, I think, for the most part. I managed to complete every challenge for the reindeer readathon, and that was so fun. I really enjoyed myself with that one. It was just really fun to participate with other book lovers and challenge myself to read things maybe that I wouldn't normally read in that month, and to read, I really did read more than I normally would. I read a over 500-page book, which is not something that I normally do. So that was great. I've only done it one other time, I think, this year. So let's just get right into it. The first two books that I'm going to be speaking about made it into my top 10. My best books of 2021, and then a video that you'll be seeing shortly, which I've just filmed, which is the best 10 classics that I read in 2021. So I'll start with How Beautiful We Were, which was one of my favorite books from 2021. I really enjoyed this book. It's something that I took out of the library and I don't own. And I think once it comes out in paperback, because it's only out in hardcover at the moment, and I have an issue with hardcovers, which I won't get into at the moment, I will probably get my own copy of it because I really love this book. It was told from the perspective of different characters in a fictional village called Kasawa in Africa. The story of the people in this village, so the family members of the different families in this village. It's the story of the destruction of the village by an oil company, an American oil company called Paxton, who come and decide that they want to drill for oil. And in the process of drilling for oil, they contaminate the land and they contaminate the waters, and the children of the village start to get sick and they die. A lot of them die. How the village grapples with what's happening to their community and how they come to terms with what's happened. They clearly lose a great deal. I mean, it's a very sad story, but I thought it was just very beautifully written. Each character has a pretty distinctive voice. Even in some parts of the novel, the perspective is told from the point of view of the children. And it just was a really thoughtful, really quite beautiful book in a certain way, despite the fact that it was also, in addition to the fact that it was also very pertinent and really spoke to so many different concerns of our day, concerns about environmental causes, obviously, so the destruction of the land on the one hand, also oppression of other people's lands, oppression of other people, capitalism, all of that is included in this story. It was just I thought it was a really powerful novel. I think it deserves recognition. I'm surprised it hasn't won anything yet. Beautiful We Were, I highly recommend that one. Well, that was one of the first books that I finished off, and I listened to it on an audiobook. It was just really a pleasure to listen to as well. The actors on the audiobook did a fabulous job narrating that story. The next book I'll talk about briefly is Frenchmans Creek. This is going to be on my top 10 classics that I read this year. I've really fallen in love with Daphne du Maurier. I am a huge fan. I've read Rebecca and Jamaica Inn before reading this, Frenchmans Creek, and I cannot choose a favorite. It's impossible, although this one's up there. They're all just so different. What's amazing about Daphne du Maurier is that she's sort of genre bending, in that her books don't fit exclusively into one specific genre, I don't think anyway. If anything, this is the closest she came to writing a romance, but there's also high-spirited adventure involved in this story, as well as some really good twists and turns that you don't see coming. Highly recommend Frenchmans Creek, and really, so far, the 3 books that I've read by Daphne du Maurier I would recommend. But if you want to hear more about this one, you can check out either the vlog that I did about it. That's the other thing. I did 3 vlogs over December where I read the books for the Reindeer Readathon. So if you want to catch up on more detail or in-depth conversation about all of these books, most of these books, then you can also check those out. Yeah, 3 vlogs which you can check out, and also in my top 10 classics for 2021. The other book that I read in December, although I didn't read it for the Reindeer Readathon, was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't think I need to say too much to add on to what other people have been saying about this book. It's been all over the internet for the last few years. I'm just a little bit late to the party. I didn't think I was going to like this book halfway into it. I was sort of shaking my head and going, I don't understand what the big deal is. I don't understand why people love this book so much. But then about halfway through, I started to really get engrossed in the story, engrossed in the characters. I cried while reading this book, which was completely unexpected. I don't know. She's clearly very gifted at writing characters and writing about, you know, human emotion and deep sort of sentimental stories. So I'll look forward to reading some of her other work. The story here follows Evelyn Hugo, who is poor and comes up in Hollywood. It just follows her life and her experience as a starlet, the different things that she has to do to maintain her good standing in Hollywood, including marrying 7 different men at 7 different periods of her life and over her career in order to maintain her Hollywood status. And I think that's all I'm going to say about it. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I am going to post a video. I think there's a tag floating around about how you rate books. So I'll post a separate video about my rating system because I don't really have a rating system. Still trying to sort out what I want to do about that. I think I've expressed it a couple times on my channel. I get frustrated with the star system because I feel like if a book doesn't get 4 or 5 stars or 1 or 2 stars, if it ends up somewhere in the 3-star range, it kind of gets forgotten. It doesn't really get talked about. So, and in general, I mostly read books that I want to read. Occasionally I am disappointed by books. If I DNF a book, then I'll include it in my wrap-up that I DNF'd the book, but if I DNF a book, then I usually don't give it a rating. So many things to discuss there. I'll wait and discuss it when I do that tag. Coming soon to my YouTube channel. So the remainder of my pile here are all books that I read for the Reindeer Readathon, and there, as I said, I vlogged about all of them. It was a great experience for me. So in December, I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This was another great recommendation through BookTube and through the internet. It was great. I really enjoyed it. The premise of this story is that Jessica, our main character, is returning to a high school reunion after 10 years, and 10 years before, while she was, oh no, it's not high school, it's a university, I think. So she's going back to a reunion of sorts from her university days. And at that time, one of their friends was murdered. They never really figured out who did it or why. And so the process of the story goes through the process of re-examining the murder and bringing all of these people together to really try to confront people about what they did, what they didn't do, what secrets they were hiding, and ultimately figure out who actually murdered. Of course she's called Heather. Does it remind us of Heathers at all? Yeah, just a little bit, sort of, a little bit. Like if I was rating these books, it would be really tough for me to figure out 4 stars, 5 stars. I almost just don't want to crack my head trying to figure out whether it's a 4-star or a 5-star. You get what I'm saying? Like, I know 5 stars are supposed to be reserved for your favorite books of all time. I mean, how are you supposed to pick favorites here? This just seems, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Does anybody else feel me on this? It's no problem if I dislike a book. Then I can just say, hey, that was a huge disappointment. But if I really like a book, how am I supposed to give it stars? Then near the end of the month, I read The Overstory by Richard Powers. I loved this book as well. It didn't make it onto my top 10 for the year, but that's because you could only choose 10. But I debated putting it on my top 10. Many of you will have also heard about The Overstory. It's the Pulitzer Prize winner from, I think, 2018 or 2019. It follows the stories of a number of different characters. The first part of the book are character profiles, and then trying to come to understand where we're trying to see how these characters come together for a good first half of the book. And then we recognize that they come together through various forms of environmental activism. They all have some kind of relationship to nature, and in particular their lives are explained with a lot of reference to trees, the relationship of trees to one another. So you've got this play of how trees are helping each other in the forest and working together to maintain the natural forest. And then you have this other idea about people and how we are coming together. There's a little bit of a supernatural element to the story, how people come together maybe to sustain the world. I mean, they're coming together and taking on activism, environmental activism, and they're coming together to perform acts of social activism on behalf of the environment. But I think that that's some of what he's trying to say here. I won't get into a deep dive because I'm trying to keep my videos short. But yes, Overstory by Richard Powers, which I read in December and really, really loved. And I was really happy that I got to it because I wasn't sure I was going to get to it. But of course, because the Reindeer Readathon had that prompt to read a book that was 500 pages or more, I did get to it, and I'm really happy I did. So I really liked that. It was really fun. This was another book that I read in December that I discovered through the Reindeer Readathon, because one of the prompts was to read an author who you've never read before, so a new author to you. This is Something in the Water by Steadman. I picked it up. There's a whole story about how I picked it up. First blog, I explained why I ended up choosing this book. First or second blog? I can't remember. Anyway, new to me author, her new book, The Disappearing Act, had come out in the stores, and I decided, well, let me look this woman up. It was being promoted. I looked her up, and the reviews said, oh, you've got to read her first story and then move on from there. So Something in the Water is her first novel, and it's a bit of a thriller mystery. It follows Erin, our main character, and her husband, who are away on their honeymoon, and they are diving, and they're coming back from a dive one day, and they come across paper floating in the water, and then they go back and they dive to see where the paper came from, and they find a bag. And so it's not a shark like you would think it is, but it's definitely a bag of contraband in the water. And then the rest of the story is about what do they do with this contraband now that they have it. And it's all about, you know, gray characters, morality, and should they just keep making bad decision after bad decision. And it was a page turner. I was flipping through this one like, woo, 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 woo. I read it very quickly, and it was super enjoyable. I picked up The Disappearing Act after subsequently, and I talk about that in my Christmas book haul. And yes, so I'll be reading that in the future. This was fantastic. Something in the Water by Steadman, and she's from Downton Abbey. I didn't even realize. I don't watch Downton Abbey, so I don't know if she's a major character or a minor character. I have no idea. And I read my Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I was really excited to read because I had really loved Eileen by Ottessa and Moshfegh. I still am trying to figure out how I feel about this book. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it, which is strange. It's that left me with that feeling that I need to reread it, but then I'm thinking to myself, but do I really want to reread it? I'm not sure. So it's about a woman who she decides that she wants to take a year off from life and sleep or hibernate for the whole year. It is really a story, I think, about grief. She finds, it's pretty funny. I have to say that I laughed a lot through this book. She finds this really wacky psychiatrist who prescribes her all these different crazy medications. Quite frankly, like this character, I was reading about this character and I was like, oh my goodness, she's going to end up overdosing without realizing it. But she doesn't. She makes it through her year of medicating herself and sleeping. I don't know. I think it's saying a lot about grief and how we grieve and how we handle grieving. But I think it's also saying other things about, you know, just mental health and checking out of society and how do we heal these deep, deep emotional traumas. I don't know if I would necessarily give this as a gift to other people or recommend it, but if you like Ottessa Moshfegh, people love this book. Other people really, really love this book. So I always feel like I'm missing something when other people love a book that I don't fall in love with. I didn't fall in love with this. I'm glad I read it. The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. I read also for the Reindeer Readathon. I think it's my first vlog. And I had been told by a friend that this wasn't very good. I loved Commonwealth, really, really enjoyed Commonwealth. And I loved The Dutch House. It was so good. I really enjoyed the story as well. This is kind of a family drama. So this book is about Danny and Maeve, who are brother and sister, and it's about their lives from the time they were little to the time that they're grown adults. And it goes back over the territory of their childhood when they're over the period of time when their father died and their stepmother essentially kicked them out of their family home. And from there, the story goes back and forth between present day and the past, but it's a real look at that fracture in the family. Well, family, I mean, the stepmother never really had any love lost for these two children. And it's really just a look at that, how the two children grapple with that later in their life and how they try to come to terms with all of that experience in their young life. Culminating to a point where they actually do confront their stepmother and their stepmother's daughter. But at that point, I think the stepmother has, anyway, I won't say anymore. I'm going to leave it at that. Don't want to reveal too much of the story, and I don't want to talk too much. For me, it was like it was like the loss of their father, but also the loss of like their house, their home where they grew up in the lifestyle. And this was good. I'm glad I read it. I think Anne Patchett's a good writer. I think I'll probably try to read more of her work. I've only read 2 of her books, Commonwealth and The Dutch House. Bernadine Evaristo, Blonde Roots. This is the first Bernadine Evaristo I have ever read. I thought it was a really interesting idea. So in this book, Bernadine Evaristo tells the story of Doris, who is the main character, who is a slave. She's a white girl and she's enslaved to Black family. It's the story of the slave trade if it were reversed. I mean, I thought there were a lot of really interesting insights, which I talk about in the vlog that I did with this book. But I'm not sure if it was the right place for me to start with Bernadine Evaristo because it did bog me down a little bit. I thought it was really, really interesting and I enjoyed reading it. And I think it did a good job of communicating some of the experiences of what it means to be a slave. Some of the, just a warning that some of the parts in this book, some of the sections of this book are pretty hard to read because they're very upsetting and they're quite graphic, but I wouldn't stay away from it for that reason. It just was a little bit intense in different places. So I thought it was really good. Like, I wouldn't say it was a favorite book, but I thought it was really, really good. Worth reading for sure. The Idiot by Elif Batuman, which again, I struggled as to whether or not to put this on my favorite books of 2021 list because I really, really did enjoy this book. And this book, looking back on it, kind of maybe in opposition a little bit to my year of Rest and Relaxation, this book, I think about it and I can remember the different passages that I read in this book. They come to mind very easily and I just really enjoyed it. I know it's received a lot of criticism. It doesn't really have much of a plot. It's more just about, I think it's good at communicating not only a coming of age story, but it's really good at communicating the experience of someone who feels out of place in the world and like they just don't get it. And somehow I can relate to this feeling of just like everybody gets something and I don't get it at all. And our main character, Céline, kind of has that experience over and over again. Like she's a bit of an odd character in that she doesn't necessarily see the world the way everybody else does. And I thought she was a very likable character. I really appreciated her voice. I really enjoyed this book. It's a bit of a pseudo love story. So Céline, our main character, is going to school at Harvard and she's enrolled in like a liberal arts program. And it's just about her experience there and also her experience later when she goes to Budapest and then into the Hungarian countryside to teach English. And I just thought it was a really great, quietly captivating look at, young life, and yet the young life of someone who is out of place, I guess. It says, with superlative emotional sensitivity and mordant wit. I mean, those are big words, but I do think that there's quite a bit of that in this story. So if you're a sucker for that sort of thing, you'll probably love this book. It was the Pulitzer Prize finalist, so a lot of people objected to that. A lot of people thought this book was just about nothing, and I can see that criticism, but I didn't feel that way at all. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it almost made my top books. It's really hard to pick top books. It was so much fun. I had such a great time doing the reindeer readathon, and I'm gonna have so much fun doing it again next year, I hope. Anyhow, y'all have a great, I'm filming this on a Sunday. Have a great day. I hope you're having a good week, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye. Family dynamics. How am I supposed to explain this book? I don't know. I'm having a lot of trouble explaining this book. Make the rules up as you go along to your computer screen near you.